Hello, this is Ozzie Ostwalt, and welcome to the 50th episode of Religion in Life. During the past 5 seasons of this program, we have explored the intersection of religion, culture, and society. We've looked at religion in music, religion in literature, religion in politics, and diverse traditions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Today we pause and reflect upon how these topics and more are integrated into higher education, particularly here at Appalachian. My very special guests today are 4 of our religious studies students at Appalachian who have spent this semester tracing the history of religious studies at our university. And they're going to help us understand the role of religious studies in higher education and its contribution to life at Appalachian State University. Welcome. I have with me today Claire Holland and Duke Dyer. I appreciate you joining us today, and I want to hear about your project here. It's been ongoing and very special. But first, let's hear from your instructor, Sandy Gravitt, who has supervised this project, and I believe you did it in her class, which was your capstone religious studies class. So
yes.
Let's pause for a moment and listen to what Sandy has to say about this project. Hi, welcome, Sandy.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Sandy Gravitt is here with us today. And you're heading up and supervising a fascinating project that is guiding students through a retrospective look at religious studies at Appalachian State University. And you've uncovered some fascinating material, and I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that project today.
Great. It's Religion 4700 is our capstone course, and part of what a capstone is supposed to accomplish is helping the students pull together their experience. So I had been working on a book on the teaching of religion in public universities and thought that that would be our subject. And our test case, because Appalachian State's program started in the early 60s when many religious studies programs started around the country, was going to be Appalachian State. And it has been a fascinating walk through the archives, interviewing faculty, finding alumni, and we've had a great time.
Yeah, tons of old photographs and some video interviews I've seen. It's just a really interesting look at the history of religious studies. What's the most surprising thing you have found after now a semester or so studying this history?
I think it's the quality of our program was so strong from the outset. When I first came in 1996, I remember meeting Dr. Webb and Dr. Strickland, but of course they were not a part of the life of the department at that time. But to go back and to see their histories, to talk to Dr. Dan Rice, who came in 1965, and to hear his perspective on the early years, and to understand that these professors had such a vision for what the department could be and the contributions that philosophy and religion could make to this campus as a program. I think that's been the real surprise, and both I and my students have felt like we're part of a powerful legacy that has been a little bit overwhelming at times.
Okay, so now that you heard your instructor describe what you've been up to, Claire, can you tell us your perspective of this project, what you've done, what you've attempted to do, what your goals are?
Yeah, so this project we were studying, it's called Studying Religion in App State. But first, before we looked at religious studies specifically at Appalachian State, we looked at the state of religious studies in public universities in America as a whole. So we did a lot of research. We made an annotated bibliography of different readings about religious studies as a discipline in the United States and around the world. And then we also made a database of every public university in the United States and about their religious studies programs. And we had some very interesting findings concerning that. And we also, once we did that, it kind of gave us a broader view of what religious studies is at public universities. And then we kind of focused in on what religious studies has been at Appalachian State University and put together a history of that and presented it to our department.
It must be a huge database.
It's very big. There are about 600 something?
621.
621.
And these are universities who offer religious studies, or universities total?
This is every public university in the United States.
Okay, so if we're looking at every public university in the United States, just curious, how many offer religious studies programs? Do you have a rough number?
Yeah, we have a percentage. It's
Okay, percent.
21.9%.
Only 21, 22%. That's surprising
Yes.
to me.
Mhm.
All right, so Appalachian State University is in 22% of public universities in the United States who offer religious studies courses.
Right, we're within that minority percentage. But within the state of North Carolina, it's a little bit more optimistic. So there's about a little more than half that offer at least bachelor level programs in religious studies.
Okay.
And with Chapel Hill and UNC Charlotte offering master's level, and even in the case of Chapel Hill, a Ph.D.
Okay. And before we go much further, maybe if you could articulate for us the difference between a religious studies approach to studying religion and maybe a faith-based approach of studying religion, because I think there's a significant difference there.
Right. Well, a comparative study or academic study of religion really seeks to understand how people groups interact with both the text, religious text, and the world. And often, kind of at the foundations of religious studies is this comparative approach where you take two religious texts and kind of read them against each other and kind of extract these core elements of religion and see how they kind of compare from one people group to another.
Okay. So that's different, Claire, right, from what a lot of students
Yes.
come to ASU thinking about religion. Have you encountered that kind of disconnect, either in your own life or in your peers, perhaps?
Yeah, well, I've definitely noticed in a lot of my classes. I student taught a New Testament class with one of our professors, Dr. Reed, and a lot of students come in thinking it's like Sunday school because a lot of them grew up learning about the New Testament in churches that they went to. So they come in and I've heard them say, oh, I know all about the New Testament. I learned about it in Vacation Bible School. But then they come in class, in Dr. Reed's class, or I know you teach New Testament as well, and they're like, it's very, very, very different. And I don't think a lot of people are ready for that. And so I think this project, it not only has educated me about the importance of religious studies, but I hope it has really communicated to other people who are not as familiar with religious studies what religious studies is. And it's more than just Sunday school,
Right.
So.
Well, let's talk about the history of religious studies here for a little bit then. When did religious studies start at Appalachian, or either as a department or as offerings and courses?
Yeah. So in the 1962 and 1963 school year was when the first religious studies classes were on the course catalog. And Dr. O.K. Webb was appointed to teach. He mostly taught philosophy courses, but he was the first person appointed to teach these classes. And these classes continued to be offered, and the department was officially established, philosophy and religion, in 1965.
Okay. So in 1962, how many religion courses did we have?
Not many. They were mostly Bible-based, and I want to say there were maybe five or six.
Five or six courses, one faculty member.
They had Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, or like the Bible as literature, a class kind of like that. They may have had like a Jesus class or a Paul class. We still have some of these classes today too, which is very interesting, but our department has definitely grown since then.
Do you know how many courses we offer now, I wonder?
I do not, but a lot more than
it's dozens.
we did at the very beginning.
Yeah, I don't have an exact number,
courses,
but it's dozens of courses, and of course we've grown our faculty too.
Very much.
So, Duke, what was going on in the 60s that led to the establishment of religious studies courses in state universities?
Yeah, so kind of around the same time that we formed our department, you see a lot of departments forming around this 60s period. And that's really based on kind of the help of a court case, a Supreme Court case, Schimpf versus the Abington School District. Now this is due to the Schimpf family who are in school in Pennsylvania. They have children in school in Pennsylvania. And in that state law, Pennsylvania state law, required that Bible verses be read kind of before the morning announcements. And as a Universalist family, the Schimpfs didn't want their children to participate in this Bible reading. So instead of removing their children from class and having them miss morning announcements, they kind of challenged the school on this law, and it eventually elevated to the Supreme Court. Now, an important decision came out of that, and that's from Justice Clark, who kind of affirmed that while the law couldn't be in place, that comparative religion and studying comparative religion was kind of essential to education. And now this applied to, of course, K through 12 schools, but it kind of gave rise to religious studies at the public university.
So it's a very important moment, really. So now it becomes, religious studies becomes defined as a certain type of approach to the study of religion. And as you said, this kind of births the development of courses and departments of religious studies across the country. Very interesting. And our own department then started in 1965. So in those, in that 60s period, say early 60s, mid 60s, some very important personalities stand out. Who did you come? You've already mentioned OK Webb, but who else stands out as some of those early leaders?
Yeah, Bill.
Here at Appalachian, yeah.
So OK Webb was the first appointed faculty member to philosophy and religion, but Bill Strickland, he was not only the founding dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, but he was also chair of philosophy and religion at one point, and he taught philosophy and religion courses. E.G. Woodcock was a name that came up. Dan Rice, who is actually still alive, and we got to speak with him. Our professor, Dr. Gravitt, interviewed him over the phone, and he has wonderful things to say about the early department. Jim Steins, who you got to interview, taught lots of Bible classes.
And I had the privilege of teaching with some of those people, and knew some of them in my early years here. In fact, I had an opportunity recently to sit down with some important administrators at Appalachian, Harvey Durham, John Thomas, and Bob Sneed, and they were all here during those early years. And if you would, let's take a moment and hear some of the things that they had to share about the beginnings of religious studies at Appalachian State University. Welcome this morning, gentlemen. It's an honor to have you both here. We have Dr. Harvey Durham and Dr. John Thomas with us today, and we're very pleased that you're here to help us construct this retrospective look at the history of religious studies at Appalachian State University. I would like to mention that between the two of you, you provided academic and university leadership as provost and chancellor for 30 years, from the early 70s to the early 2000s, and that's a remarkable achievement and gives you the ability to provide the information and perspective that only the two of you can provide. So thank you for joining us today.
We practiced it until we thought we got it right.
Well, you did a good job, and those were great years for the university, so it's a tribute to the leadership that you both provided. So I thought we'd start just by maybe talking about the early years of religious studies at Appalachian. It appeared, well, the offering of courses in religion appeared sometime in the early 60s, and continued and grew through your leadership years. So maybe if you could just provide us a little information or remembrances of some of those years, that'd be great.
Well, and, excuse me, John, go ahead.
Just going to say Harvey came here in '62 and I in '74, and he has researched the catalogs back for a long time, so I will, like you, I'm going to learn something.
Oh, you okay?
Yeah, I went to digitize, the university has digitized all of its catalog, and so I went back to the 61-62 catalog and carried that through to the 68-69 catalog. And in 61-62, there were no courses listed for philosophy or religion.
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever. But the next year, 62-63, there were courses listed under the Department of Social Studies, and for both philosophy and religion, maybe a half a dozen courses that were listed in 62-3. Now, one of the things you got to keep in mind about these catalogs, they had to be ready, camera ready in the fall of the year before. So the 61-62 catalog would have been put together in the fall of 1960. And then in 1961, the 62-3 catalog were being put together. And that was the first year that the courses appeared, was in that particular catalog. So there were no faculty. I looked at the faculty in the department, and the other areas that were carried were economics and geography and geology and sociology. Those were the other areas. Now, coming on the scene in 1962 was Dr. O.K. Webb.
Was he the first person hired?
He was the first person hired, and it appeared strange to me that we had courses that were drawn up in the fall of 1961, and yet the faculty member was not on board until the fall of '62.
As they did their interview process and whatever, we learned, and the running joke was that Appalachian was the largest Baptist school in the state of North Carolina. But chapel was not one of those things that you were supposed to go to. You had assigned seats in the auditorium in the administration building at that time. Now, that particular administration building burned, but there was enough seats in the auditorium for everybody. So therefore, and people checked seating. I mean, it was checked every time.
So your attendance was taken?
Attendance was taken, that's correct.
The fact that we were joint philosophy religion was for many of us, unmitigated good. We liked the fact that we were interdisciplinary in that connection. I think we did hire some people who came to us whose degree and background and interest was philosophy, and who came with some trepidation because felt that their mobility, perhaps future professional life, and ability to get a philosophy job might be affected by the fact that they came out of a philosophy religion department. But it seems to me the department over the years handled that very well, and in most cases I think people found that was stimulating rather than a stumbling block for their professional.
It's nice to have someone in the department from a different discipline to converse
yes,
with. Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
Alan, did that present, this dual nature of the department, did that present problems in administering the programs?
Not really. I would say there were occasional disagreements, but if I can just add to what Jim is saying, we used to have something in the department called the faculty colloquium, which means that during the course of a year, with the number of faculty we had, we'd get together in the evening once a month. Jim would present a paper, Tommy'd present a paper, Ray would present a paper, and then the paper would get critiqued from the perspective of the various people who were there. So it's an interesting phenomenon for me. When I gave a paper on Judges 5, for example, it was critiqued not only by fellow biblical scholars, but by somebody who was a Hegelian philosopher. Now, I guarantee you most people in religious studies did not experience that on most campuses.
Right.
So I think there was a real good ambiance that was there of trying to understand the other person's specific interests and disciplines. And out of that dialogue, I think, developed some very, very positive things. I was delighted we had that, and I lamented the fact when that came to an end.
All right. All right, their remembrances are really important, some of them quite funny, and all of them very enlightening to the environment at Appalachian when religious studies began. But another thing that your study represented and discovered was that there was tremendous growth at certain points in the department's history in terms of offering religious studies courses and enrollment. Can you briefly describe those periods of explosive growth?
So in the mid-1980s, there was this crazy exponential growth that went on in enrollment. So the enrollment in world religions courses increased by 150%, and enrollment in Old Testament increased by 333%.
Wow.
And enrollment in New Testament increased by 669%. And this was in the mid-80s, and the growth kind of continued into the late 80s and early 90s as well. So people were definitely interested in learning about religion, and this also led to the addition of a lot more adjunct faculty, because there was that need for people to be teaching these classes because people were wanting to learn about it.
I'm really happy that this growth took place. I was hired in the 80s, so I was probably one of those hires in response to the increased demand. So what was going on in the 80s and 90s? You have any idea that led to this?
Well, I've kind of thought about this, and I do know that the religion department moved into I.G. Greer at that time, so they had a lot more space. So that could have contributed to the growth. The new building that was, I don't know if it was nicer than what they were in before, but that could have contributed to it. And also the 80s was the Reagan years. So, and I mean, there was plenty of religion that intersected with that, with the moral majority and everything. So that could have been a reason why people were interested in learning and educating themselves on different types of religion.
It's kind of a resurgence then of interest in religion in general in our culture. It's fascinating. Well, we also had a chance to talk with a couple of the leaders in the department itself. Dr. Alan Hauser, who was chair of the department for 15 years, and you mentioned Jim Steins earlier, who was a very popular teacher, both of them serving during those periods of growth. So let's take a moment and get their reflections on that period as well. So I wish you two could have been around during the 80s. It was a very exciting time. But what do you, Duke, what do you take away from this study in terms of how you view the role of religious studies in a university, and particularly at Appalachian State University?
I always thought, kind of our department was rare. And from doing all these interviews with faculty, I've kind of noticed how much they care about the student and care about their undergraduate experience. And I always thought, and this is kind of the same message I've heard from all of my friends in the department, that the faculty truly cares about the student. And I thought that was just because you select one faculty member here, one faculty member there, and they kind of just happen to have this nice meshing of focus on the student. But in fact, it's kind of a collective, it's really kind of a group effort. And this is something, this focus on the student, this care and empathy is kind of communicated down from the department and kind of decided all at once. And it really shines through.
Well, we have a small department, so in terms, we teach a ton of students in gen ed classes, but in terms of majors, we have a nice, small, close-knit group, so we've got a really good faculty to major ratio, if you will. So that's great. I'm glad to hear you have that experience. What about you, Claire? What do you take away from, your main takeaway from this project?
Yeah, so we interviewed a lot of old faculty, current faculty, and alumni, and current students for this project. But I loved talking to alumni because a lot of people, when you get a religious studies major, they're like, oh, what are you going to do with that? You're just taking the easy way out, which they're very misinformed in that way. But speaking to alumni who have gotten a religious studies or philosophy and religion degree here at Appalachian State, they were all very successful, whether or not they were doing something that directly correlated to religious studies, like ministry or academia. A lot of people were out in the business world and just out in economics and working in really, really important positions, and they were using the skills from their religious studies majors in these positions, and none of them regretted getting a religious studies major, and that was very encouraging to me. And they all had wonderful things to say about our department, as did former faculty as well.
So did anything, just quickly, did anything surprise you? What stands out as something unexpected that maybe came out of your studies?
I think the number of people who got religious studies degrees that are not doing things that directly, like I said before, directly correlate to religion as we know it. So people, we spoke to someone who minored in philosophy and religion, and he is a CEO of a company now. A lot of people assume if you're going to major in religious studies, you're probably either going to be some kind of church leader, or you're going to work your way up in academia and eventually get a Ph.D. to teach. But there are so many other things that religious studies can empower you and give you the skills to do.
Great. What about you, Duke? Anything surprising?
I would say that we kind of have this history in the past of team teaching classes, and that really plays on the interdisciplinary aspect of religious studies. I'm thinking specifically of a class, Art, Music, and Ideas. This is a class that interviews it came up with Dr. Hutchins, it came up with a former professor, Dr. Maria Lickman, and Dr. Jim Steins. And this kind of class where you have multiple people from various departments kind of coming together and working to really tease out a subject and really tease out, in this case, art, music, and ideas, and explain that to students. It seems like students really had a great impact on that, and they really enjoyed it. And it's one of those things that I kind of wish I was here to take because it seems really interesting.
Wow. Well, we're very proud of the work you've done. This is just a phenomenal project. I think this will be something that our university community benefits from for years to come. So I appreciate your hard work and your time today to come and talk to us about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Okay. Welcome, Leela and Neil. The second part of our group of students here today. We have Leela Wright and Neil Smith. Now your peers, Claire and Duke, talked a lot about the history of religious studies at Appalachian. And I know you were all involved in all aspects of this study. But I thought we might change the discussion a little bit with you two, maybe talk about religious studies in general, in the contemporary sense, in the current sense. So you'll be reflecting some on what you've done in the project and also your own experiences. So I know in the project you kind of divided up the focus into who we are as a program and what we do as a program. Could you reflect a little bit on that and maybe talk about what makes religious studies distinctive as a discipline? You know, what kind of skills you learn, what kind of real life practical knowledge you gain?
Yeah, through our research and interviews, we kind of came to the conclusion that as a department here, we create students to be critical thinkers, interdisciplinary thinkers, and prepared for the world, and had this like empathetic view towards the world that like has a compassion and respect aspect towards it, and in that we create a coherent understanding of a religion for our department.
Let's break it down a little bit. When we use that phrase a lot, critical thinking. What exactly is critical thinking in this context? How do you become a critical thinker? What sort of skills do you bring to the table?
Well, what we gathered is that you're challenged by your peers, you're challenged by your teacher, and you challenge yourself to not just settle for old answers that you had coming into the department, but like challenging yourself to open new doors and think outside the box. It sounds cliche, but that's what we do, and in that we promote knowledge rather than ignorance. So we just, yeah.
Well, so you're really thinking analytically about topics, and I've always thought that if you can train students to think critically and analytically about religion, which is a very kind of personal topic sometimes, then that might be the hardest thing to learn to think critically about. So what about empathetic thinking, Leela? You mentioned that as one of the skills that religious studies approach tends to nurture. What do you mean by empathy and empathetic thinking?
Yeah, so when we take religious studies classes, even if it's a Christianity class and you're a Christian yourself, you open yourself up to understanding how other people are Christians and view that set of beliefs. And so it's really great to help that thinking, but it's also really good to understand how other countries and world beliefs influence our own perceptions of them in the political sphere, in education, in all those different realms of society. And so you see by taking religious studies classes that there's sometimes a lot more in common between sets of beliefs and people than maybe just a basic knowledge of Islam or Buddhism might offer.
I wonder if y'all could you've taken courses now, can you think of an example or a course in particular that helped promote these types of approaches to viewing the world, say either critical thinking or empathetic thinking or even global understanding? Some specific examples?
I think had Buddhism with Dr. Mai, and we kind of understood that we all have a Western bias, and through his course just broadened everything and opened my eyes to that not everyone thinks alike. And I knew that, but it was just expanded upon perfectly in his class. And then also in in Old Testament with Dr. Duke, we talked about how you can't just assume things, and that things are when you're viewing other cultures and other time periods, you have to put that into a context, into a matrix, and think about it into the time and culture that what was going on.
So it's a good example of both empathetic thinking and in the case of Buddhism. I'm just curious, did you know anything about Buddhism when you entered the religious studies program here?
I tried reading a book before starting his class, and it was not a good book, and also I didn't understand. But Dr. Mai, excellent teacher, and now I don't know a lot, but I got a lot from his course.
Right. Yeah. What about you, Leila? Can you think of some specific examples?
So my first class that I took in the department was the basic world religions class, and in that comparative study of religion, you get to in one semester compare all of these different religions at once, and so you get to dive in on a basic level, but you get to dive in to Islam or Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism and see their differences, but also see their similarities. And so that was really cool for me because I got to kind of learn all of that at once. And then more recently, I'm in the gender, sexuality in the Bible class, and that has been really eye-opening for me, thinking about current discussions about gender politics and in the current feminist movement, and thinking about that in terms of the Bible and how we can approach gender studies in a more complex way, because it's a lot more dynamic than people think.
So you both mentioned in your examples something that maybe we haven't talked about yet, but religious studies seems to be, in these examples you've given us, crossing disciplinary lines, right? So you're bringing in other cultures, you're bringing in other ways of viewing various topics, you're bringing in information from other disciplines. So is that another component here of religious studies, that it tends to be cross-disciplinary?
100%.
Well, great. Okay.
I think that religious studies is a completely interdisciplinary field. We have a professor right now, Dr. Ellis, who's looking at biology of religion. We have philosophy. We have Dr. Schilbrecht, who's a philosopher of religion. We have all these people, sociology. There's economics and politics that tie into how religion is incorporated into the society. So you can look at religion in a whole sphere of topics, and I think that's really important, especially now when it's really influencing our politics and our current social life in America specifically, but also across the world.
Have you had the same kind of cross-disciplinary experience?
I through Dr. Ellis's biology in religion and ecology, that's bringing in many different ideas like anthropology and biology, and then just an understanding of what other teachers do, what other professors do, along the lines of sociology and philosophy. It plays to the core of the humanities, and it helps us understand humans better, I think, by having all these different fields come in. And it's not simply supplementary components. Like, some of these courses are fully complementary with other discourses and disciplines.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, I know in part of your project you produced a couple of really nice videos, and in one of them you asked the question, who we are. So I'd like to take just a couple of minutes here to watch that video where you've interviewed some students and professors to answer some of these questions. We all see ourselves as teachers first.
We're a small program that has a lot of value.
There's a lot of education that goes on outside of formal classroom environment.
In the religion classes, I was so passionate about what I was learning.
That passion is seen through us taking classes about people and about how people view the world.
Naturally applying critical thinking to something that can be so complicated, so personal, so hard to talk about.
I do think our professors cared a lot about what was happening in the world.
I was in my senior year when 9/11 happened. I remember that the religion department grieved. I mean, there was palpable grief from our professors over what this meant. It did communicate to us this was more than just lost lives. This was going to impact a whole lot, and there was wisdom in that.
I think religious studies is a great place to kind of, it just forces you to ask about cultural phenomena from many different perspectives.
There is a really strong commitment among our students and faculty to really want to learn and really think critically.
We are doing our best to make the world a better place through what we are able to lead students to realize.
I wanted to go to their classes, every single class.
Students should major in religious studies because religion is really the foundation of values across the world.
I think these classes are incredibly important for the campus.
Also, I mean, religion is an important aspect to billions of people. And so if we try and study religion in as objective way as we can try and better understand not only our own beliefs, but other people's beliefs as well.
In my view, the study of religion is inherently interesting because it deals with something that is almost universal and has been with human communities for a very long time.
People realize these days, I believe, that religion is important, and it's important for understanding everything that's happening in the world.
A few years ago, Madeleine Albright presented a paper at the Society of Biblical Literature, and her point in that was that you can't understand people until you understand their religion. It's not just something they think about, it's who they are.
One of the most colossally important things that any university can be doing is teaching world religions.
Whether you are religious or not, religion is so integral to all parts of society.
Religious studies in general is just core to human life.
So obvious that religion was such an integrative element in the histories and cultures of people that it seemed self-evident that ignoring it in the study of the humanities and of humankind overall would be a travesty.
The quality of our department has always been strong.
We just bring this very unique flavor to Appalachian State.
We're never going to have 500 majors like some of our departments. We understand that. We're not striving to be that.
I've always felt that this was a wonderful environment.
In a sentence or two, describe who you think we are as a program.
One of the best in the state.
Okay, cool, bye-bye.
Well, that was fun to watch. It's great hearing excited professors, excited students talk about how they view themselves. Leela, and I think one of the things that some of the interviewees that you talked to in particular mentioned, particularly the alumni, I think, one of the things that was commonly voiced is that a degree in religious studies tended to be transformative in some way. You want to comment on that just a little bit?
Yeah. So in our department, when I was talking to current students, whether it was during the interviews or not, I noticed that all of our students realize how amazing the program is and how transformative the professors and what we teach is. But what I think is more amazing is that when you leave our undergraduate work, you don't understand and don't fully realize how much you have learned in this program and how it can be applied to a whole variety of topics and careers. And so I think our students do realize how amazing our program is and how much they've learned. But I think after they graduate is when it really becomes obvious that religious studies is transformative as a field and as you go into a career that might not be related to religion or even the humanities in general.
Yeah, I guess sometimes when you're in the middle of a transformation, you may not recognize that
the
change is going on, right?
Yeah, and you don't see all the potential opportunities that might be ahead of you as well.
So do you think the reason perhaps that religious studies as a degree can be transformative, I guess, personally or professionally, is there's, I guess, a certain amount of introspection that goes on when you're wrestling with these big questions, right? I mean, these religious studies courses wrestle with questions that people have been asking for millennia. So do you feel that, Neil? This kind of introspection that leads to what we've been talking about as transformation or transformative experiences?
Yeah, I feel that when you're as a student during undergrad, you have to sort of look within, and things don't make too much sense, and you're questioning things and having doubts, and also through critical thinking you're challenging yourself. But as Leo said, once you get out, you have all these skills, and now you're able to apply them, which I think is important when you've been in the department and you've been just struggling and trying to figure things out and understand these topics that have been taught for forever.
Yeah. We've got a second video here where some of the alums wrestle with the same question. So let's take a couple minutes and watch this video as well. Maybe you can respond to it.
I'm a philosopher of religious studies here at Appalachian State. We have a department that does global study of religion.
The availability of that curriculum provides students the choice to explore that universe of knowledge.
We bust misconceptions.
The department tries to focus on offering classes that meet the interests of students that come in.
We taught a course called Religion and Literature, and that course completely altered the lens through which I looked at not only text, but which I actually looked at the world.
Practically speaking, just taking a year of Hebrew was a big leg up when I got to seminary.
I really enjoyed my research methods class and learning about the different studies of religion.
I've tried to gear what I do in the classroom to what I perceive the students' needs to be.
I think I actually was awakened to, a much wider world than what I'd done in Raleigh.
It really helps with cultivating that empathy faculty. It helps to broaden your horizons and your understanding of other cultures and other people.
I think it's important for people to have an understanding of different worldviews that are strongly held.
What we do, I think, in our field is help develop ways for having just even a rudimentary understanding of what it might mean to see the world from someone else's point of view.
I want them to come away with some sense of what it would be like to wake up Buddhist or Muslim.
We are thinkers.
I think I learned to read. I think I learned to think.
Open to inquiry, so it teaches them to think about serious questions.
Reality, truth, justice, morality, those are the questions that I ask as a philosopher.
I think this program has definitely helped me gain a lot of confidence in my academic abilities.
Critically think about what you have been raised in your entire life. And that was really hard.
One of the things that has been a pretty consistent trend throughout all the years I've been here is the idea of training students to give careful analysis in what they do. To teach students not so much what to think, but how to think.
And that again was one of these sort of life-changing, life-altering courses. There must have been about, 12 to 14 people in the class, and 7 people would assume the identities of philosophers, and 7 would assume the identities of theologians.
The colloquium is what it was called. The coolest class ever. And it was intense, man. I mean, people like standing on chairs and stuff.
Me now versus me freshman year is a completely different individual, and a lot of that honestly has to do with what I learned through this department.
Religious studies gives students a set of skills that are helpful in a variety of pursuits.
Promoting global citizenship.
The religious studies major is turning out to equip people who are much more flexible, more critical thinking, more articulate people, which again makes them better citizens.
We've got students who are social workers, students who are journalists, students who are lawyers.
I think a religious studies degree gives you a really good foundation for finding and critiquing arguments and making arguments as well. And I've been able to apply that to the law just like I would like a religious text.
I think today we really do a stand-up job of offering students a real good degree in religious studies, something that we should not be ashamed of. There are lots of things we can do with this degree.
I never cease to be amazed at how people come in, get a major, get a degree as undergraduates, and you learn to them 5, 6, 7 years later, and they're doing something dramatically different. My advice to undergraduate students is go with what you love, go into it with enthusiasm.
People will say, you get into a conversation about what should I major in. I always encourage them to spend time in the philosophy and religion department.
So again, very nice job on producing those videos. It's great to hear from alums as well. How would you respond to that? I guess when you're listening to alumni speak, you're really looking at yourself in a few years.
Yeah. In a couple months, yeah.
In a couple months, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I loved making these videos. It was a really cool opportunity to hear current professors, hear current students, but also talk to alumni dating back to the 70s. And I thought that was a really unique opportunity. One thing that really hit me, this is kind of a story, when I was making the videos, we had those kind of phrases before we go into a certain segment. And we were trying to think about the verbs and the words that we were going to use for those phrases. And so Claire and I were in the library one day just on the thesaurus, on thesaurus.com, and trying to find the perfect verbs or words to completely encompass all of the voices that make our program and form our identity. And that was really challenging to do that, but it was really cool to try to incorporate everybody's voices into a common theme and a common message about our program.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So Neil, what's your favorite takeaway from this project?
I'd say appreciation for the department through these interviews and the research and understanding religion departments as a whole, and mostly through the interviews with our current faculty. It's been eye-opening, and although the conversations were very one-sided with us interviewing them, it was extremely beneficial to us. I know that as a fact, and I hope it can be beneficial to people in the future when they're looking back and reflecting.
So it's a word that I've heard several times talking to the students, appreciation for the discipline or appreciation for the department. So you seem to feel a sense of pride. Is that overstating it? You're proud to be a religious studies major at ASU?
Oh yeah, I've very much enjoyed it.
Great.
Yeah. And the department and the faculty.
Wonderful. Leela, what's your favorite takeaway?
I think what Neil has said sums it up really well. But something that I really enjoyed thinking about is that we discovered a living legacy and a history of our department that's really unique. And that's beautiful, and that's something that I'll always come back to when I reflect on my time here at App State and in this program. I love our faculty. They're absolutely amazing, and I love all the current students that I've taken classes with. And I've just really enjoyed talking to alumni and kind of seeing where I'm going to be in 5 to 10 years, and how no matter what, everybody has always said that they loved their time in the program and that they would never change anything. And I think that's really beautiful.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, now that you're done, what next? Do you take your grade and walk away, or what can we expect from this project? I think you got a website, and maybe this is going to be ongoing. Just as we spend our last minute here, maybe tell us how one who's interested in this could access this information.
Yeah. Well, we both do want our grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is very important. But we do have a website that is public and shows kind of all of the things that we found and that are in our archive. And so it's a really great public source for people to look at and see kind of the history and also the current state of our program. And I think that's really great. And so This has a timeline of our professors. This has the videos. It has kind of a reflection about the religious influences on campus throughout the years. So it's a really great resource. I hope it is used. I hope it's continued to be used and added to with new photos. We have a trip that Neil's going on. I am unfortunately unable to go on, but pictures from that study abroad trip and pictures from future events with our program and our professors and our students, and just kind of keeping tabs on our alumni. I think that's a great way to have that resource as well.
So you're going to Italy and France, I think, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Well, I expect a lot of photographs from that trip.
I hope so.
Bring it back, we'll add them to the website.
Yeah.
I want to take this opportunity to tell you how proud I am of you, and it's great to have you in the program, and you've done a remarkable job on this project. And before we sign off, I want to give your instructor, Dr. Sandy Gravitt, a chance to maybe have the last word on this.
Yeah.
But thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I know we think about this all the time, but I'm wondering if now having studied the history of our program, has it changed your thinking at all on the role of religious studies in higher education?
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that I have learned through this process is how integral religious studies is to a liberal arts curriculum. I always knew it, and we've been primarily a service department here, servicing other majors and having a small group that were a part of our program specifically. But now you begin to really see how religious studies fits into so many different areas of our lives and informs so much of the conversation that goes on campus. One of the things that I've discovered about this program is our co-curricular programming has been an important part of the experience here. Lecture series, convocation speakers, public forums, this television show.
Sure.
We have always helped the conversation extend into the community. And I think that's another one of our most valuable traits.
Is that integral role of religious studies, is that the main thing that you take away from this project and the main thing that you hope is communicated by it?
I think there's two things. I think that integral role is one of the most important things that you take away from this program. As we've seen the decline of the humanities, and particularly the rise of religious studies in sectarian universities, the fact that our public conversation is diminished with regard to religion is important that, well, it's important that we're here to help protect against that loss in the public realm so that people understand the value of religion and understand religion's place in the public conversation more fully. But the other thing that I've really taken away from this experience is that we have the most amazing alumni doing extraordinary things and who feel so passionately about the experience that they had here. And so it's made me proud that I'm a part of that history.
Right.
And that we need to work hard to connect our current students with that legacy and to think about how we extend that into the future.
And I bet your students feel a sense of pride as well.
One of the first things that they say to me when I ask them, what have you learned through this process? They all say, I'm so proud to be a part of this department.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for this project. I think it's an invaluable service to our department and to our university, and hopefully beyond the walls of the university as we continue to look at the role of religious studies in our society and culture. This has been a wonderful project, and I appreciate you not only leading our students through it, but taking the time today to meet with us and talk with us and put a capstone on this program.
Can I add one thing?
Absolutely.
We will have a web page that documents the history of our program, some of our alumni and our faculty, and we will also have an archive that will be public of some of our past.
Okay, and we'll put that website up on the screen and in the credits so that our viewers can access that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, students. And thank you to all the administrators and faculty members who through the years have built an exceptional tradition of studying religion at Appalachian State University. You should be proud of the first-rate program you have helped to create. And as we reflect on the history and the future of religious studies here, we should remember that our Department of Philosophy and Religion serves the state of North Carolina and the nation through education, through the production of new knowledge, and by encouraging understanding and acceptance, and through adding to our collective human search for meaning in life. Well, that's Religion and Life for this week. Thank you for joining us for this special 50th episode. Until next season, this is Ozzie Ostwalt.